Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weirdly Magical podcast with Jen and Lou. And actually, let's introduce ourselves first today, and then I'll go over housekeeping and things. Jen, do you want to introduce yourself?
You kept putting in my recording connection that I forgot to do. So I'm Jen Duchenne, and I'm an Akashic reader, healer, mentor, guide, and teacher, teaching people how to access their Akashic records and creator of the Illuminating Journey cards. I offer tools, guidance, and wisdom to activate your soul's choice.
And I am Louise Eddington of Cosmic Owl Astrology, hence the owl, and now known as the Cosmic Owl. And I am a soul astrologer and writer of modern astrology and my new book, The Complete Guide to Astrology, which is available for pre-order now and is published on January the 28th. And I do YouTube videos, I write, I do astrology readings, of course. I have a membership as well, and I help my clients to really reach a deeper point of deep self-awareness and acceptance. In other words, you're not broken. There's nothing to fix. Just work with what you have, basically, and work to your strengths. And I think that's it from me. So a bit of housekeeping first. We don't have any questions this episode, but if you have any questions you would like to send in, send them to weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com, and you might be featured on the podcast. Pretty general questions, only please, not chart readings. We do have a Patreon, patreon.com /weirdly magical. And we're actually getting a few patrons now. Thank you so much for supporting our work. When we reach about $50 a month coming in, we're going to start doing Patreon only content. And we're getting towards that point. So again, thank you. And what else have I got to say, Jen? There was something. Oh, yes. We did the Weirdly Magical 2020 overview. And thank you. We've had great feedback about that. We are still both offering our $108, 108 specials, one each we're offering. So if anybody's interested in that, again, just email us and we can send you the link to book your special. That's available until January the 12th, just after this full moon that we're going to look at. So on to that. Full moon eclipse. It's a pre-numbrial lunar eclipse, which in itself as an eclipse is not that strong because it means the moon is quite far from the nodes. But there's nothing not powerful about this eclipse. The eclipse itself is on January the 10th, 2020 at 7:21 p.m. Universal Time. That's London time. It's at 20 degrees 0 minutes of Cancer and Capricorn because the full moon is in opposition. Conjunct the sun over in Capricorn, which is, so the sun's at 20 degrees and 0 minutes of Capricorn. We have Mercury conjunct, we have Ceres conjunct, we have Saturn and Pluto conjunct, and it's only 2 days before Saturn and Pluto conjoin completely. It's a date astrologers have been slathering over for years, to be honest, so we'll talk more about that. Also on the eclipse, Jupiter is conjunct the South Node in Capricorn, so it is the North Node. This is a North Node eclipse, which means the moon is on the North Node, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means. So we've got this massive opposition between Cancer and Capricorn, but there's also a cardinal grand cross. Eris over in Aries and Juno in Libra making the grand cross on the eclipse. And to top it off as well, and there's a couple of other little bits, both Uranus and Eris are stationing direct right after the eclipse and before Saturn and Pluto conjoin. So it's like, wow. So before we go into all of that, because there's a lot to say about it, we've both pulled cards as usual. So Jen, do you want to show your card?
Yes. Oh, I turned it upside down. I'm like, where's my card? All right, so this is interesting. So I have two cards here. The first is the light. This is from the Illuminating Journey cards, and there's tools in here. So the first card that came through was the tool of the light. And I think this is really speaking to not only this idea of being this full moon that's bringing light in. It feels very much like there's an opportunity here to when you bring light into things, to see them in a different way. So when you add light to certain thoughts, ideas, etc., here you have a new way of looking at it. And then the other card is the 7 portal. And this card it's very interesting that this card has come through, because I see this as kind of the inner space of the Akashic records. Or other people see this too. And what's so significant about it is thinking about the fact that everything exists whether we see it or we don't see it. So the idea of letting go of old ideas, old items, old history that we've hung on to, we have to keep it intact because it proves something, is what this card is saying is you don't need to hold it intact. You don't need to save it and, kind of cling to it. You can release it because it still exists in the world. It still exists in the field. It's just that you don't have to hold on to it or carry it. So it allows you to expand your mind, expand your heart, and begin to see things that perhaps this energy did not show. Like, when you're all stuck with stuff, you don't see beyond that. But once that stuff moves, it's like moving a rock out of a cave. You move it out the way and you're like, wow, I didn't know there was all this stuff behind. I also think it's interesting because I believe there's an owl in here. Yeah, there's an owl. Is that Louise?
Yes, I can. Yes.
And there's Athena. Yeah. So it's this female energy coming down to kind of, in a sense, descending to take her place or to bring that wisdom, that understanding into our field.
And interestingly, the day after this eclipse, Pallas Athena, asteroid Pallas Athena, moves on to the galactic center, which does bring down new information. And she's the strategic visionary. So there's going to be a whole lot of new information coming in during this period. So that card fits that.
Right. That's pretty fascinating, because if you think about the Akashic field, it contains everything, right? Including connecting to the galactic center. So that's really fascinating.
Well, my card is Death. The Death card, which is actually one of my favorite cards. It's the one that used to strike horror into people and go, oh, death. But for me, it just means rebirth, which is what's happening on this period, which, yes, this full moon eclipse is on the 10th, but we can't separate it from all the energy around it and the Saturn-Pluto conjunction on the 13th. And this is the Scorpio card, which is ruled by Pluto, and this is death and rebirth. And this energy is, there's going to be a time before January 2020 and a time after. But really, it's about death of old patterns and letting go, all the things Jen was saying. And so this is a real stripping away. If we look at the energy at the South Node in Capricorn, Capricorn itself is a sign associated with death as well, because he's it's actually a feminine sign, is actually kind of more death doula. The whole line from Cancer to Capricorn is birth to death, the cycles of life, and that's what's showing up. And we're going through a massive change of life cycles collectively. Individually, I have to say, people will all feel it because of what's happening in the outer world, but a lot of people are approaching it with fear, which is the shadow side of Capricorn. But you'll only be majorly affected if you have planets around actually hit by the charts. But even then, it's an opportunity for rebirth, a restart, building something really new and aligned. So I love the death card for that. So
Right. It's a perfect analogy for what we're going through is when you have death, you have just like with the card, the 7 here, you have the opportunity to choose what it is you want to bring to life.
Mm-hmm.
What is it you want to see? What's the lens you want to live through? And I think that is so beautiful to have that death of how things have been with such definite, such a definite thing, right? Yeah. We know that it will impact us all because we're all connected to the societal belief system. So some way or another, we can shrug our shoulders, say, oh, or go into fear, or we can go, oh, here's an opportunity. And, it kind of makes me think of the card with the light, like, what are you doing with the light, right?
Yeah.
You using, it's not denying the dark. It's just saying, how are you choosing to see and experience what you're seeing and experiencing, right?
Very cool. So let's look at these numbers because they're quite fascinating to my mind.
Very, very fascinating. Oh, yes, it's pretty amazing, right? Here we have, this is happening on January the 10th, which is a 1, and January is a 1 month. So we have the date 1/10/2020. We're moving into the 2020, which we've talked about, is so powerful. This duplication of the 2 numbers, not just in the year, moving us into a whole new time, but also waking us up to what is possible, waking us up to how we're making choices. What are we choosing? Where are we putting our energy? What are we actually cultivating? And of course, we have the 20. That same 20 is repeated if you're looking at the sun and moon 2020 with just zeros. This is so incredible. You just cannot make this up. Nobody would believe it if you decided to do it and say, oh, right, that's never going to happen. And here it is. It couldn't be clearer. This complete delineation of what we're moving into, this idea of being in purity, of releasing the old and moving to the new, taking on our own empowerment, which is what the awakening is all about. The awareness that, oh, I've been living in a dream and here I have to wake up. And Lou and I were just talking about this energy. This energy we're in is a very, like, the hard, cold reality of life. Mm-hmm. And we have been trained to think of it as something despairing, but actually when we look at it, step back and look at it and go, let me have that 2020 vision and look how hard things that happen lead to amazing things, because here we're all standing for something we value. We're really moving into that direction. We're looking at the bigger picture. We're looking beyond the obvious of what we see. And that's what's reflected here in this day. I love that it's not only the 20s, but that we have the 10, which is all about new beginnings. The zeros is divine protection, love, and light, where we have this opportunity just to bring in a whole different way of dealing with the same old shit, which is amazing, right? That 1 and then the 2 of the 20. Remembering that the day itself, right, because it's the 10th, in numerology, universally, we're in a 5 month. It's a 4 year, 2020, 2 plus 2 is 4. So this is all about, just like Capricorn, it's all about the diligence of doing what we need to do. And then we're in a 5 months. So we know it's all about change, changing the way we approach what we're living by, because we're in the moment. We're learning to be in the moment instead of thinking about the future or the past. We're living in the moment and responding. What do I need to do now? Because I can't go into my dream world because this shit is really happening. So how can I deal with it and not feel threatened, right? What do I need to do? What do I need to bring? And so being in this 5, we then have the 4 year, we have the 5 month, and a 6 universal day, 456. So I think that's a pretty interesting lineup, because again, it's about that kind of continuation of the step-by-step 2019, 1, 2, 3. Now we're moving to the 456, which is pretty fascinating. So I think that all of this energy of these main numbers is telling us this is about making choices. It's about choosing wisely, finding our balance or peace between what is happening out there and what we're choosing, like how we're going inwardly to change who we are in order to deal with the so-called reality in a different way.
For sure. And, you know, my dog's sneezing again.
Great.
I also did want to mention, in case anybody hears noise, I'm having new windows installed, and they were supposed to be finished by today, but they're not. So if you hear any hammering and drilling, then that's them. But hopefully my mic blots most of it out. So, you know, and going back to Jen's numbers, you know, there's twos everywhere in this. There's Saturn and Pluto at 22 degrees, which is the degree they're going to meet at in on the 12th. And Uranus is stationing direct at 2 degrees Taurus. The one, Chiron, is at 1 degree of Aries. And Juno, part of this Grand Cross, Cardinal Grand Cross, is at 1-1, isn't she, Jen? So I find it interesting she's at that, because Juno's an interesting character. She's in Libra, which she's very, there's no real rulership for asteroids, but she's very kind of aligned with Libra energy, because Juno was the wife of Jupiter, and in astrology, she's really about equal rights, equality, and egalitarianism, and for everybody, basically, you know, economic, politically, all those things. And here she is over there in Libra, squaring this this full moon by less than a degree. She's very powerful on this full moon, I think, as well, especially because it's all connected to this massive Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which, by the way, is so rare. I hope people realize how rare this is. In Capricorn, at least, the last Saturn-Pluto conjunction alone was at the start of the Protestant Reformation. The last Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn with Jupiter, also in Capricorn, and the North Node was in Capricorn then, was back in 1284. So this is, you know, pivotal. And we didn't know that Pluto existed back then, and the energies of planets is more felt in our consciousness after discovery. So I do think this is going to be way more transformative period, which brings me to Eris. Eris is at the fourth corner of this Cardinal Grand Cross in Aries. She's been in Aries since 1927, so for most of our lives. And she was only discovered in 2005, so we're just getting to know Eris. And she's the goddess of discord, but my view of her after working with her quite a lot is that she does cause discord, but she's revealing the artifice of the ruling classes, which is what she actually did. She's said to cause the Trojan War, but she didn't. She threw the apple that said to the fairest at this party of the elites of gods and goddesses that she wasn't invited to, and then they fought over it. She didn't cause the fight. They fought, and they caused the war. So she kind of just reveals she's another outcast because she was not invited to the party. So yes, she does cause trouble a bit, but only where it's kind of warranted, really, in my opinion, personally. And here we have Eris, opposing Juno, who is all about equal rights and the rights of the oppressed, and so they are squaring it. So this is going to be a very disruptive period, I have to say. But I feel that it's disruptive to do, we've seen it happening already, you know, the Me Too movement, the corruption in politics, it's all kind of being brought up and out. And Pluto has a lot to do with it, but I think Eris has a lot to do with it more. And so she's pivotal in this. Eris and Juno both are. And Eris, of course, as I mentioned already, is stationing direct right after this eclipse. And then days after, a couple of days after the eclipse, well, not many, actually January the 26th, I think, is the exact one, Pluto squares Eris. And to give you some idea of how rare that is, the Pluto Eris cycle started on December the 15th, 1756. That's when they were conjunct together. And then their opening square, the first quarter square between the two, happened 9 times between 1907 and 1911. Then the opposition was not till the 1970s. We had 5 exact oppositions from 76 to 78. And then this square from Pluto to Eris on January the 26th is the first of 5 over the next 2 years. So this, if you think back, 1756, the cycle started. That's before the United States existed as a body. It was the start of that revolutionary time. It was the start of the French Revolution as well. So I do think we're heading into revolutionary times. We just hope there'll be peaceful revolutionary times. But all our government institutions, I think, are going to change. I think there could even be new constitutions, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. For me, when thinking about Eris, is this idea of she's an opportunist in the sense that she gives us an opportunity, right, to make a different choice. When she threw the apple, for instance, into the party, people could have said, wow, that's such an interesting question. Who's the fairest of us all? Let's approach this from a different way, as opposed to approaching it from an egoic point of view, is what happened in the story. So we have to remember these shit stirrers like Eris and Uranus that both believe in a different or more enlightened experience, because we're going through this revolution of becoming enlightened. The thing is, we don't just become enlightened by hoping that everything's just going to go smoothly. What actually happens is things start to crumble. There's more aggression and aggravation, and it's the things we choose to do in response that will predicate the age of Aquarius, because it takes, according to the past, around 150 years in order for this to actually get started. So we're just at the seeding of this. And so it's fascinating that we have these meetings of these great players in such dynamic ways that are like, yes, something can happen and you can go into fear, you can go in, see, we never get it. You know, we're talking about this stuff, this whole rebellion and dissolution of the patriarchy. It doesn't mean people are just going to lie down and say, oh yeah, I've been out of integrity, so here, let me just give you everything you want. Yeah, I'm just going to, everything's going to be all fair. It's like, no, that's dreamland, okay? We actually live in a real world, so we have to look at some of these horrific things that are happening from a bigger perspective, like going, this awful stuff is happening, and how do I need to respond to this? You know, what am I going to put my energy into? Because this is all about us putting our energy into who we are and what we believe and what we value, so we can stand up to the oppression and to the pushback that is coming. Us turning to our nature, to connection with nature, as opposed to falling into a hole of just technology for the sake of technology. Oh, we could have all these great things we're doing and exploring. We're going to space. But if we don't deal with our problems, we're not going to escape the imprisonment of what comes with it. So I think this is all about choice. free will and choice. The 2 is about finding that balance point between two things. The 1 is about being an individual. So we see the pattern over and over again. So we're being reminded, like Eris, she's coming in, she's going, here's a moment to pause and go, which way do I want to deal with this question, with this golden apple? Here somebody's come into our midst who wasn't invited. We don't even like her. And now she's confronting us. And what are we choosing to do? I think that's such a...
Are we going to fight over it? Who knows? You know, and who knows what to the fairest meant as well. They just assumed it meant who was the most beautiful. Maybe it didn't.
Well, but that too, again, if you're looking for validation outside of you, like, oh, I want you to say I'm the most beautiful. They could have all gone, well, you know what? I'm the most beautiful and I'm good with that.
Yeah.
But instead they chose to fight about it. So again, it's that same thing of looking at how we can spend a lot of time spinning wheels or looking at what other people are doing and not actually focusing on building what it is we believe in. Because behind the scenes of all this disturbance, we all have to be building the things we believe in through value, integrity, honesty, and this determination of what it is we want. It's not going to happen just by sitting on our couches. It's not going to happen by talking about what we're pissed off about or attacking people we don't like, right? I think that's just such a fantastic comparison where we are now to that same place when Eris entered that party, right?
Yeah, I agree. And Juno too, you know, she was Jupiter's wife, and we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. And you know, their marriage started off well, and then he started, you know, being a philanderer and treating her quite badly, and and so she fought for the rights of women like her, basically. So do we choose to do that as well? And you know, Ceres, as Jen mentioned something about living in alignment with, you know, the earth, the nature, and coming back down to that, living, you know, instead of thinking we've got to go out somewhere else to fix things and stuff. And Ceres is very much about that, and she's right in the mix, right next to the sun in Capricorn on this, and she will be at 22 degrees when Saturn and Pluto meet on the 12th. And she is about the natural cycles of the earth and of life and death and rebirth and all those things, and the harvest. And we've been talking about it for months, but you know, we are so being called to live more in alignment with what we have here instead of thinking there's something out there to fix us. And that includes our own humanity, and you know, the fact we have cycles of life and death in that too. So and Mercury's right there next to the sun as well, meaning our minds are preoccupied with that. And incidentally, Mercury is still out of bounds on this eclipse, so we're still thinking out of the box. Things are still a bit Mercury retrograde-ish because Mercury's out of bounds until the 12th, until Saturn and Pluto meet. I did want to talk a little bit about the South Node, or the nodes, Jen, because Jupiter is on the South Node, and we are being asked to kind of let go of these attachment to these man-made ideas of what rules are, of dominion and control and all the things about the patriarchy, you know. And I think this is going to be a massive release, and it's at 8 degrees, so I'll let Jen talk about that a little bit. So.
Well, I find it fascinating. It's 8 degrees, right? Because we're in a two year. We've already talked about the 2, about balance and bringing all of this, kind of making the choices, the diplomatic choices, as opposed to kind of being a victim or whatever, right? How we respond, or an aggressor. And then we're in a 4 year, and we have the 22s, which add up to 4, and then the 8. So 2, 4, 8. This year and this event here is a lot to do with manifesting a new reality, And these are all the things we're talking about. How do you manifest a new reality? You actually start to do things. It's very material. You're bringing ideas into the earth. So when you have this 8 here, and fascinating that Jupiter and the South Node. So South Node is the drain, right? And Jupiter is expanding that drain. It's making the drain bigger. It's kind of like a magnet, pulling out more things, letting us release stuff. I think, or what I hear, is this is all about us releasing the suffering and this idea that we have no power, right? So it's an illusion, and it's a great illusion because we can ask somebody else to take charge, but now we're being asked to step up. And 8 is the number of leadership. It is also the number of stepping through obstacles or around obstacles, not letting some idea or obstacle stop us from doing what is needed, pushing the vision out of the kind of mind or idea, out of disappointment into action. Like, the thing is, we don't know if it's going to work unless we start doing it. And that's the key, right? And then, of course, with the North Node, right near the moon there, is not right, but close enough, is this idea of what are we creating, or leadership in terms of what is our home to us. And that's something we need to think about. Like, we valued in our communities a commercial idea of home. And are we moving into lean times where we're going to say, I don't need all this stuff because it's just bogging me down. It's making me, spend all my time worrying about how I'm going to hold on to my stuff. So it really is about letting go of those things and going, oh, these patterns, beliefs I've held that have kept me safe are not keeping me safe anymore. So it's that energy of releasing what we don't need and going, yeah, I'm cleaning house, right? I'm cleaning house in such a big way that I can be that warrior of a new beginning. I can pull back and focus on what is required.
I also see Cancer as this kind of the sign of the clan. It's like going back to what is really family and home. It's find our clan. It doesn't have to necessarily even be your birth family, but it's remembering that we are stronger together, and we're all in it together. There's all that kind of feeling of coming together into a little shell and protecting ourselves, kind of circling the wagons, if you like, but in a healthy way. It's kind of looking after each other. Cancer is very nurturing. The North Node usually is about the higher energy of the sign. So, I do know there is the shadow of Cancer, but the North Node usually pulls us to the higher. So
right, it's pulling us to the potential. And again, 2s are all about coming together collectively, individually recognizing who we are. It's about loving ourselves and loving each other instead of separating ourselves, which, that's the polar opposite of the 2, is to see division, us and them. And so when we're coming together, we're creating our own tribes. Yes, you're different to me. Maybe you're not the group I want to be with. I want to be with this group. So we can feel we belong and develop whatever it is we need. I do think too, with the serious thing and all of this in terms of harvest and our food supplies, this is really an important thing here, because things are changing so much. Everything has been so mechanized and taken out of the hands of individuals, and we're going to have to come back to thinking about that. How do we feed ourselves on a kind of a more mundane level? How do we take care of our own needs? How do we support each other so we're not relying on other groups, other people who have power over us to give us what we need? And especially now with all these weird weather things we're having, with this Uranus, Aries, this kind of shock and awe type of thing, we are having things that are impacting our Earth. Like, horrible things are happening in terms of fires and water and stuff like that, which is all part, again, pushing us out of the comfort zone of how we've lived, and moving us into making more active decisions and having the determination. This is what I want. This is what I believe in. This is what I'm moving towards.
Now, there's one, before I mention the other thing I wanted to talk about, Jen talked about the horrible fires. Can I ask you all to send thoughts of rain to Australia? I'm very connected to Australia. I lived there for a couple of years. I have so many friends there, and it's apocalyptic right now. So please join us in that. But moving on to another thing I saw, um, it's Venus and Mars. The sun is actually at the midpoint of semi-squares to Venus and Mars, and that means the moon is an awkward aspect to them too. But I'm going to talk about the semi-squares actually, which is actually a very creative aspect. And of course, Venus and Mars are our anima and animus, which we all have within us. And Venus, and they're both in visionary signs. Venus is in Aquarius, which is incidentally, she's in what's called mutual reception with Uranus. So Venus is in Aquarius and Uranus is in Venus ruled Taurus, and Uranus is going direct the next day. And Venus in Aquarius is more detached, but Aquarius is all about seeing the bigger picture. It's kind of more kind of this goal oriented, being able to step above and see that bigger picture. And Sagittarius also has that energy, and Mars is in Sagittarius, and they're both equidistant from this eclipse. So those two are, that's, you know, it always astounds me how these things line up at pivotal times. It's almost as if the universe knew what it was doing.
What a concept.
I know, exactly. And so I think that our anima and animus are really equidistant in visionary signs. That's giving us the ability to step above and look down at this, as everything that's going on, and kind of see the good that's coming underneath, and not getting sucked down into the fear and the shadow, and say, you know, there is a way through and beyond this if we all kind of pull together and make plans and goals to create a better world. You know, we're being given these opportunities, as Jen said about Eris. There's so many opportunities in this period. And then Pallas on the Galactic Center, she's the visionary strategist too, bringing in those bigger new ways of doing things as well. And there was one other thing I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, right after the eclipse, as I mentioned already, Eris and Uranus both turned direct. And for a few days over this period of tremendous change, we don't have any retrograde major planets at all. The nodes are always retrograde. We've got a couple of minor. Lilith's always bobbing back and forth retrograde, so she's and some of the new outer planets are retrograde, but any of the main planets, we have no retrogrades. That doesn't happen very often. Okay, so it's a period of fast, rapid death and rebirth and destruction and change, I think. So, yeah.
Right. And thinking about the fact that we're in a 5 universal month, that is so much about fast change, and this time about making deliberate but quick decisions. When you're building something new, it's like you really have to be focused on your values, knowing who you are, stripping away the extraneous. You can get right to it. Is this going to work? Is this the right way forward? Because we don't know the outcome anyway. So knowing that I'm building this feels like it's aligned. So checking in, being very connected, because that's the way we connect to our tribes. I do find it fascinating, that thing with this Venus and Mars, the divine couple coming into an alignment, both being in these spaces of expansion, of risk, of choosing a new path and allowing us to choose our freedom. And what does that look like? Freedom is something you actually have to apply yourself to. So I think that's really fascinating. And to see the lineup of all of these female energies that are pulling us into this awareness of our strength. We have to learn, like this is what we're all learning, is about how our voices, and I don't just mean what we say, but the things we hold to and put our attention to, is part of each of us is creating this time we're in. So what we're putting our voices to and our energies to and our beliefs to is what will expand the potential, because when you know what they say, what you put attention on grows. So it's just like this idea of understanding that things that are happening around us are happening because they need to happen. But what are we doing about it? Are we running to hide, or are we going, right, this is awful, and what will move us out of this space of suffering, etc., that we're experiencing? I find it so fascinating that the Pluto and Saturn with the 22, we talked a little bit about that, but it just feels so important to understand that 22 is a master number, right? So right now with Capricorn is all about mastering new ideas, mastering the idea of climbing the mountain, or getting used to the idea of having a tail and, being half fish, half goat, whatever. But this idea of mastering things we have not mastered. So we can't avoid conflict. We can't avoid difficult conversations. And with the 22, this number is so much about bringing peace, but through design. This is a deliberate number of harmony and balance. We have to be active in that, connecting to each other, connecting to what's true for us, speaking out, not being afraid to share what we believe in, so that we can master this idea of peace. It just isn't going to be a blanket that falls on top of us.
Yeah.
Right? It's like we have to work to it, but we also have to believe and see the vision beyond what people around us are doing. Yes, that is this, but what am I choosing so that I can activate a different reality? Because, people who talk about us moving from different dimensions, this is one of those things. Just the dates that Lou mentioned about when the last time that Pluto and Saturn met, and Pluto didn't even exist, and Aries and all these didn't exist, Uranus, they didn't exist in the consciousness of people. So we know we're going to have a very different experience, besides the fact that it was so amazing. These were religious-based things that were happening where people were pushing against being dominated and controlled. So here's another opportunity, but what are we choosing? Are we choosing to fall under it, saying we have no power, or are we choosing to go, I'm creating a new reality, a new idea. I'm kind of pulling all of my value away from this stuff here and back into myself, so I can make evolutionary choices.
Yeah, definitely. And I can't remember what words you said that kind of triggered this thought in my mind, but it's, just politically, no matter what country you live in, it was on the what you focus on expands. I've been saying this for ages. I rarely ever mention the politician in this country that I do not support, because I don't want to focus on him. And so, it doesn't matter which side you're on. Both of focus on what change you do want and things, rather than fighting against the other one. This is what's brought us to this place, and it's the only way out of this, I think. We know that fighting against things doesn't work. Look at the war against drugs. We've got worst drug situation than ever, and prisons filled with people because of minor drug offences, because of this war against drugs. And, ease off, focus on what you do want rather than what you want to fight against. It's just basic natural law.
Right. It's also very empowering when you think about it. All of the people that are doing those things have an incentive and are being vitalized by your energy. As you're pushing against them, they're growing in strength. When you remove that kind of barrier or energy, they fall over because there's nothing for them to push against. So at some point, that will collapse. As long as it has energy being connected to it, it's growing and it's expanding. So I think here, what's going to happen with a lot of stuff that's happening in this country, other countries where there is this idea, this push to autocracy, is the more we are disappointed or going, see, I knew it wouldn't work, nothing's happening, they're not getting any consequences. The more we focus on that, the more we create that reality. So it's like, right now, it's not going exactly the way I thought it would or hoped. But this is what I'm building. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing to reinforce or lay foundations for a new system that doesn't allow for this kind of control.
Yeah. And, basically, it's going to collapse at some point.
Well, yeah, right.
The more we don't resist, I think it's going to,
right.
All this like, oh, resist. Well, no.
Right. I mean, I find it very interesting. We have all these things, not just like the war against drugs, things like cancer, disease. We have a lot of that stuff resist. That's a lot of energy to push against something you don't believe in. Right?
Exactly. And you don't want in your life.
Right. And you're saying to the universe, give me more of this, because you're focusing. The universe doesn't know the difference between positive or negative. It's just like, give me more of this. I want this, and then more of it shows up, instead of going, what do I really want? Taking the time, sitting down, what is it that I really want? What in my life is this thing that I want to capsize or release and just let go of? Because we all have, well, I don't know, maybe you don't, but for me, I know I have my issues around living with certain things that I've been controlled by, thinking certain people's opinions or certain people, oh, they're the authority, they know better than me, who am I to argue? And kind of going like, wait a minute, that's ridiculous. I don't want to give that person, that idea, my power. I want to take it back so I can actually build the things I believe in. And then I'll meet other people who are building things they believe in, and maybe we believe the same thing. And then we create those communities and we gain strength, which is so much more, not just healthy, but it's also more vitalizing, because here we're doing things we enjoy, that we love, that we believe in. And we're actually getting the expansion of that, as opposed to expanding the attention of autocrats that we don't believe in.
And I don't think anybody doesn't have anything they don't want to let go of. They're in denial, or they're a complete narcissist or something, because they think they're always right.
So it's such an amazing and powerful time right now to release these old things. I really think this is part of this lunar eclipse here, is the opportunity for completion. 22 is also 4. These are karmic numbers, different variations of completion or foundational energies that we're going, right, I know what it feels like to suffer and be a victim and just go along and do what I don't believe in. What will it feel like if I, just change my mind? Like, we got all this energy coming through with Mercury, right? And Uranus, bringing us this new idea that we have all these things, technology, ways of doing things that are available for us to use towards the common good, as opposed to, oh, that only works for people with money, or that only works for people with power. Those are just old beliefs. Who says they're true?
I do want to say we're recording this on New Year's Eve, so and it's been my experience and that of most of my clients, I have to say, and people who just comment on my Facebook page and things, that all these, the patterns and the issues that we need to let go of are kind of a bit on our face at the moment. It feels like they're coming at you, depending on what it is, where it is in your chart. I'm first house, and so it's like, it's almost felt like a bit of an attack just over the last couple of weeks. But I just stepped back and realized, like, oh, it's that. And it's showing me what I need to change and where I need to grow and mature, which is another good Capricorn word as well. and where I need to release some old patterns. So it's kind of like it's what I need to change in my face, and it's been happening to all my clients too. So wherever you it's not necessarily going to feel like an attack to you. It's because it's my first house. I think that it's felt that way on occasion, because that's who I am in the world. So wherever it is in your chart, if something's happening repeatedly, that's what you need to change.
Right. It's I'm having mine's, I guess, in my 9th house. So for me, but it's very close to my 10th. For me, this is about establishing my my independence, or my sense of expansion.
Yeah.
Who I am, and in a different way. So for me, this is more about me having those experiences or conversations that go, this is who I am, this is what I value. You don't value it, you don't like it, doesn't matter. I just need to know what I need to know so I can make my own choices. So I'm not under the thumb of someone else. I'm not delusional, because whenever we're using other people's ideas, and just looking at society's rules and cultural rules, those are just opinions, right? They're not actually truths. They're opinions that have been developed, and so we're all kind of being pushed under these opinions and going, oh yes, I got to kind of bow down to this. And it's like, no, I don't need to do that, because I don't care about it. And we are in this moment, this incredible, incredible moment of getting to choose to say no to something that has been here for thousands of years. The Piscean age, which is now coming to an end, has been here for 2,500 years. So, how fortunate are we that we chose to come at this time, that we can actually go, you know what? I'm done with that. I don't need it. Just because you don't believe it, I don't have to convince you that it's true, because it's true for me, right? So there's an enormous amount of freedom and liberty in bringing that harmony or balance to going, what creates the balance in my life? What creates the balance between death and life, or new creation, or new ideas, or governance, commerce?
And interestingly, though, you talked about the thousands of years of man-made regulations and things like that. I mentioned the last time Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto were all together in Capricorn was 1284. But the time before that was actually 1894 BCE, and that's when Babylon was formed. And the Babylonians created a lot of these regulations and laws that we have been living under for thousands of years. So, now we're going to revisit them all and do something differently. And this time as well, that it's happening all together. Not only do we now know Pluto and Eris exist and all that we've said already, we're moving into the age of Aquarius, which Jen has mentioned. That wasn't happening last time either. So this period, this month, this year, this next couple of years could not be more epic, to be honest.
Right. It's a reclamation. We get to redecide, and we just have to look to the times before. That's what was happening. Each of those times, a new society energy was coming through, and this is the most powerful we know of, because of all the things we've talked about and the things we know, to reclaim what is ours, reclaim what was ours, the balance of the divine within us, the ability for us to recognize we're divine beings and that we can create our own reality. And in fact, we must create our own reality. This is just so liberating to think like, oh, those are just man-made things. I don't even agree with that. Or do I agree with it? Oh, no. Okay, out the window. Or this part's good. Now we can create something that works even better, right? And of course, we've got to test it. This is about doing the real stuff now, right?
So, are we ready for the symbols, or is there anything else worth mentioning in this this period? I'm just going to look at my list quickly of
Right. I do think, I don't know if we mentioned Chiron. I know we've mentioned him before.
Oh, we didn't talk about him. I mentioned
Right.
he was at 1 degree, that was all.
Right. 1 degree in Aries, and this is again the ones and twos that are prominent. It's all about being focused on your own healing. Like we tend to want to heal others or fix others and go, oh, I know what you need,
Yeah.
instead of going, what do I need? Because so much of what we are annoyed about or what comes up for us is really a reflection of the inner world of what we need to heal. And I think you talked a little bit about that, Lou. But it's this idea of that's the Chiron energy right now, is you have opportunities, we all do, to heal these wounds.
Mm.
So are we just going to reinfect the wounds, or are we going to go, no, I'm done with that. I'll take the healing and I'll move away from that energy? Because having that in Aries, that's amazing. It's our body, it's our, it's kind of this thing. We can change our experience with our wounding and move away from these long held beliefs.
I did quickly want to mention the degree Eris is at before we go to the symbols.
Oh, right.
I've talked about it a lot, but 23 is Eris's number. Okay, there's a group called the Discordians who worship the goddess Eris, and it's believed to be her number, and it ties up to so many things. A couple of things I'll mention are the number of chromosomes in our body and the digits. We have 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 ears, and a nose, and it's 23. And there's other correlations like that as well. So it kind of occurs to me that, we see a lot of the new agey kind of people go, oh, our DNA is literally being upgraded. Well, it probably is. because Eris is being aspected at that 23-degree mark by all these planets moving through Capricorn. So
Right. And if you're talking about that, two is another aspect of everything comes in twos, right? Even in our bodies and our cellular structures, it works in the twos. So that's another aspect or a knowledge that we're upgrading. I do think that the 23 is very significant for so many reasons. Of course, it's the number of the royal lion. It's considered the most powerful number in the numerology because it brings in the strength to follow the truth of our hearts. And I believe that is exactly what the goddess of discord is all about. She opens the door for us to go, I've lived in fear. This is bullshit. I'm going to take this path of fearlessness.
yeah, absolutely. So let's do those symbols, because I think they're pretty rocking as well for this.
Right. All right. Am I going first or you?
Yeah, whichever. You go first. Yeah.
All right, so we're looking at the 21-degree Cancer. I'm doing the Sabian symbol. A famous singer is proving her virtuosity during an operatic performance. And the keynote is the emotional reward accompanying cultural excellence. If anything represents the type of response that a well-developed society gives to the individual who successfully pours their energy into the skillful externalization of the great images of its culture, it is the opera. The operatic prima donna is not merely a lonely performer like the piano virtuoso. He or she is the star in a collective effort. The opera is not only music, but a story, a mythos, which embodies some of the most basic images and emotions, characterizing the culture that gave it birth. Mm-hmm. So, culture is indeed extolled or condemned by the opera and their lurid and tragic passions. And here it is about the price of success for the individual as well as for the collective acclaiming him or her. What is success really worth? And I think I'm going to add in there, what is success, right?
Yeah,
We have a very old-fashioned idea about it.
Well, I think that's part of what's happening, isn't it? We're letting go of what it means to be successful. you know, we no longer, well, not everybody, people are waking up to the idea that, you know, it's not cool for, you know, 10 people to have as much as, you know, millions of poor people, and that we need to even it out. And we look at the price of success for these oligarchs, that's all we can call them, you know, what have they gained from that, really?
Well, and I think too, for me, well, I kind of look at it doesn't matter really if some people have a whole bunch of things, if they choose to make sure everyone has what they need,
But
right?
they don't. That's the
Right.
problem.
Well,
That's the price.
exactly. So this is about greed and separation, right? Us and them, as opposed to collectively, there's enough for all of us if we understand that.
Yeah, it's not exactly like, oh, you shouldn't have
Right,
money just because you
exactly.
shouldn't have money. It's exactly.
And to add to that, it's not just oligarchs, but just, I mean, I know lots of people that have worked very hard to earn a decent wage and kind of survive or live well, that can be soul sucking,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. So what does it, like Jen said, what is success? You know, what is wealth? What's abundance? Is it all just about hoarding like we've been doing?
Yeah.
So the Chandra symbol is high up on a mountain, an eagle's nest. Heritage and birthright, the soul's inheritance, being granted a belongingness and attunement to rarefied worlds. Consciousness triumphant, maintaining the crown vista of universal essentials, you are imbued with the natural wonders and treasures. Wakeful, vigilant, and clear, you have superlative faculties of sifting through and finding out what we all need to see here. Remarkably untouched by personal limitations and distortions, called upon to uphold the truth and knowing it. Serene, focused, and unsentimental, diving right to the place where the goods are. Impeccable skills used under constraint, the finest accompanies each breath. The mark of previous karmic attainments of the highest kind. Resuming where you left off, steady, self assured, and righteous in the best sense, beyond reproach. Oh, I love that, to be honest. That's
Yeah.
like,
Powerful.
yeah.
Right. What a wonderful way to live.
Yeah, isn't it? And that's what we're seeking, I think. I sound funny with the Chandra symbols. Sometimes I take them as a bit of a warning. This one I take as what we're aiming for, and which is very appropriate because it's for the moon, and the moon is on the north node. So that's our karmic potential, our future, what we're being pulled towards or given the opportunity to live that way.
Right. And even with the Sabian symbol that seemed kind of weird in a sense, the opera singer. I think the truth is the opera singer is all of us, right, out there singing our own song in the world, and that is what allows us to be part of the world.
Well, I loved the keynote that you read with it as well.
Right.
The emotional reward accompanying cultural excellence. We're trying to create a kinder, more egalitarian culture. That's what we're being asked to do, really. So,
Right.
with new rules. So, yeah, awesome.
Beautiful.
Okay, so that's that for that one. And wow, happy new year to everybody.
Mhm.
We're going to tell you where you can find us, but we're really grateful for you supporting our podcast all through the year. We do love doing this so much, and we're kind of excited to help guide you through 2020 as well, because it's really exciting time to be alive. So
Yes.
yeah, so Jen,
Yes. Thank you so much.
how can people find you, Jen?
So they can find me on my website, jenduchenne.com. The Illuminating Journey cards are available there as well, jenduchenne.com/illuminating journey cards. I have a YouTube channel that I share readings from the cards, meditations, etc. I think it's under my name, Jen Duchenne, but anyway, you can look it up. I also have a group on Facebook, We Belong Here. I'm all over the place, and I have a membership site, membership group, not site, Soul Pillar Salon. So yes, offering lots of free things, readings, etc. Those are not free, but readings and
And a reminder again that we're both still offering the specials. So.
Right. So it's a great deal, $108, still available till the 12th. If you book and pay before, even if you don't do it exactly by the 12th. Yeah, so
yeah,
look for me. I'm everywhere.
And the same with me. I'm everywhere too. Google my name. One of my main focuses for 2020 is to do more video though. So I have a YouTube channel, Cosmic Owl Astrology. So I would appreciate any subscribers, new subscribers to the channel. I plan on doing a lot of like series of kind of almost teaching some astrology and things like that. I'm on Facebook, Cosmic Owl Astrology Facebook page. Also, I have a group too, Planetary Magic Cafe, Instagram, Louise Eddington. But you'll find them all from Google, and I'll put some of the links in our YouTube channel, Weirdly Magical Podcast YouTube channel. So we look at subscribers there too. And reviews for the podcast. Any reviews welcome as well. We love reviews. They help the podcast kind of get seen more. And so there's lots of things you can do to support the podcast just by clicking boxes and subscribing and leaving stars and written reviews and things like that. So that'd be very helpful to us. So yeah, so I think for now it's that's it. End of the decade, although there's some discussion over whether, did I tell you that, Jen? I got unfriended on Facebook by this elderly male astrologer because he was insistent that the new decade doesn't start till 2021 because there was no year zero in the Julian and Gregorian calendars. And I was just basically like going, well, it's all bullshit anyway because calendars are made by man and it's nothing to do with you.
Right. Somebody just decided arbitrarily to do it, and whether it didn't exist is actually existing. We have this year here, right? So you say this year doesn't exist. And I mean, what could be clearer? 2020. You know, you can't be clearer about the fact that we've hit a major milestone. I mean, I don't think you need to know anything about anything to know that, right?
It kind of just made me laugh. I was like, oh,
that's hilarious.
Oh well.
People have their weird opinions and then they take themselves off.
More old paradigm gone.
Right.
He was like, you're irrational.
Yay, I'll be irrational in your eyes.
Okay, well, there, I hope you're all laughing now. So for this time and for the last time in 2019, it's goodbye from Lou.
Yes, last time in 2019, it's goodbye from Jen.